She was meant to lure the human into a trap, but ended up saving his life instead. The sky was dark purple, filled with heavy clouds and a strange silence that only came before something terrible happened. Valari stood on the edge of a broken cliff, her long silver cloak moving gently in the cold wind. Her yellow eyes stared at the human base below, lights blinking through the trees like quiet fireflies. She touched the small black chip hidden behind her ear and whispered just one word. Ready? Far above. Inside a hidden ship, her commander growled into the mic, "You know your task, Valari. Bring the human in. Make it clean." She closed her eyes and took a slow breath. "Yes, Commander," she said softly, though her heart was not steady anymore. This was her final test. The mission that would make her a full hunter of the Zalari race, but something inside her chest didn't feel right. Like a drum beating out of rhythm, she moved through the forest like a shadow, her boots making no sound on the wet earth. The plan was simple: pretend to be wounded, gain the human's pity, lead him into the open field. That's where the kill team would be waiting, hidden and silent, ready to strike. Humans were dangerous, yes, but too kind, too trusting and easy to fool, at least that's what her people believed. She found the perfect place, a small clearing with old cargo crates. Half buried under leaves and rainwater, she ripped her uniform near the shoulder and smeared her own blood across it. Then she lay down between the crates, trembling slightly from the cold and fear. She had faced beasts, storms, and blade training drills for years, but this was something else. This time, she had to lie with her eyes open. Hours passed slowly, and she fought sleep. Then footsteps, soft at first, then closer, heavier. Someone was here. Valari held her, breath playing weak as the figure came into view. He was tall, with messy brown hair and armor that looked scratched and worn from many battles. He held a plasma rifle, but it was lowered, not aimed at her. His green eyes met hers with surprise, not anger or fear, just concern. "Hey, are you okay?" the human asked, stepping closer. Valari blinked slowly and gave a small fake cough. "Please, help me." He knelt beside her and gently moved her cloak. Looking at the fake wound, "Looks bad," he muttered. Then tapped his cum. "This is Sergeant Leon of Outpost Delta. I found an injured civilian species, unclear." Bringing her in, "No," Valari whispered quickly, grabbing his arm, "not the outpost. Please, they'll find me." Leon looked confused. "Who'll find you?" She gave a shaky breath. "The ones who hurt me." It was all part of the story, but somehow, saying the words made her feel small and guilty. He nodded slowly, then helped her sit up. "All right, then we'll go to my camp. It's quiet, safe. Just a few miles from here." She nodded, pretending to be weak, leaning on him, but her heart beat faster than it should as they walked together. She noticed the small things, the way he checked their path for danger, the way he kept his hand near his weapon, just in case, but also the way he slowed his steps when she stumbled, the way he gave her his coat without asking. He didn't know who she was, but he was kind. Her hand touched the tracker chip again, hidden under her hair. One press and the team would attack. One press and the trap would close. But she didn't press it, not yet. Not while this strange human looked at her like she mattered. They reached a small metal shelter in the trees, smoke rising from a chimney. Inside it was warm, simple, and smelled like food. Leon helped her sit near the fire and handed her a small metal cup. "Drink, it's just water," he said. She took it with shaking hands and nodded. "Thank you," she said quietly, almost forgetting she was pretending. Later, when he sat across from her, cleaning his weapon, he asked softly, "What's your name?" There was a pause. Then she answered, "Valari, Valari," he repeated, as if tasting the name. "Well, welcome to the weirdest forest in the galaxy." She gave a tiny smile. then looked away, outside. Thunder rolled across the sky. Inside, the trap was ready. The lie was working. And yet she wasn't sure she could finish it anymore. The fire cracked softly in the corner of the small shelter, filling the air with warmth and shadows. Valerie sat close to it, still pretending to be weaker than she was, though her strength was slowly returning across from her. The human Leon was boiling something in a metal pot. His back half turned, his rifle leaning against the wall. It would have been the perfect moment to end it. Just one movement, one strike, and the mission would be over. But her hands didn't move. She studied him quietly, wondering how someone like him could still trust so easily. He had no idea who she really was, what she had come here to do, and yet he had wrapped her in his coat, offered her food, and kept the fire going without asking anything in return. The tracker chip behind her ears started to pulse, sending soft signals to her team. They were listening, waiting, growing impatient. Leon stirred the pot and glanced over his shoulder. "You don't talk much, huh?" he said with a smile. "I get it. You've been through something bad." She nodded slightly. Forcing a small tremble into her shoulders, he handed her a steaming bowl of soup and sat down beside her. Not too close, but close enough to share the heat. "You're lucky I found you before night," he said. "The forest here isn't friendly. Lots of things out there that don't like visitors." She looked into the soup but didn't speak. She felt the tiny click in her mind a moment where the mission should take over. But instead, she asked, "Why did you help me?" Leon blinked, surprised. He leaned back a little, thinking, then shrugged. "I guess it's just what we do," he said. "You see someone in trouble, you help them." She stared at him, her voice barely above a whisper, "Even if they're not human." He smiled again, but this time it was softer. "Sadder, I've seen enough war to know it doesn't matter where someone comes from. Pain looks the same on every face." Valerie felt a strange tightness in her chest, something she hadn't expected. Was this pity or something else, something deeper? She looked away and reached up as if to brush her hair. Her fingers touched the tracker chip behind her ear. Just one tap, and her squad would descend from the trees like shadows, ready to kill. But her hand dropped slowly. Not yet, she told herself. Not tonight. Outside. The wind howled through the forest like a whispering ghost. Inside, the fire danced between them, and silence filled the space where lies had started to grow roots. Leon finished his food and stood up, stretching his arms. "I'll take first watch," he said. "You try to get some sleep." She nodded again, curling up near the heat. But sleep didn't come. She watched him through half-closed eyes as he paced near the door. Checking his scanner, he looked tired. Older than he probably was, not because of age, but because of memories. Hours passed, and still she couldn't rest. Her mind raced with thoughts she didn't want to think. Why didn't he treat her like an enemy? Why didn't he ask questions, demand answers, or tie her up? Was he a fool? Atia brave, in a way her people would never understand. She closed her eyes and whispered in her mind, "I was sent to destroy you." But when she opened her eyes, all she saw was a man trying to survive, just like her. At dawn, the fire had gone cold, and Leon was still awake, staring into the trees. He turned when she stirred and offered her a tired smile. "Didn't sleep much, huh?" he said. Rubbing his eyes, she shook her head. "Too many memories." He nodded like he understood. Maybe he did. He stood up and looked outside, scanning the area again. "We should move soon. This place isn't safe anymore." She watched him grab his gear, put out the fire, and pack their things like it was just another day, like he wasn't traveling beside someone who had come to end his life. Valerie stayed quiet, but her heart was not. The beat of it was loud now, louder than before. The mission still lived in the back of her mind, but its voice was losing strength. She was supposed to be a hunter, a trap, a lie made real. Instead, she was starting to feel like something else. Like someone who didn't want to see this human die. The path ahead was still filled with danger, but the danger inside her had already begun to change. Snow began falling gently from the sky, soft and cold, covering the trees like quiet ghosts. Vaylari walked behind Leon, her boots crunching in the frost-covered leaves. Neither of them spoke much, but silence wasn't empty any. Morit was full of unspoken thoughts. Each step forward took them deeper into the forest and further away from the mission she was supposed to complete. She could still feel the small chip behind her ear, pulsing now, faster than before. Her commanders were waiting, listening, growing, angry. She was past the deadline by now. They expected the human to be captured or dead, but he was alive, walking ahead of her, offering her a path out of the cold and into something she didn't understand. She could feel the weight of his trust, and it hurt more than she expected. The tracker could be activated any time, a simple movement, a twitch of her finger, but she didn't press it. Leon finally stopped near a thick tree and pulled out a folded map. "There's a cave a few kilometers east," he said, glancing at her. "It's small, but it'll give us cover from the next storm." She nodded, trying not to show the war inside her mind. They moved again, this time slower, the snow falling harder. Turning the forest into a white maze, Valerie had been trained in extreme conditions. Taught how to kill in silence, how to lie without blinking, but they had never trained her for what to do when the lie started to feel real. Suddenly, the air shifted. A sharp, quiet whistle sliced through the wind. Leon froze, then dove to the side, pulling her down with him just before a bolt of plasma burned past her cheek. Enemy fire. He rolled behind a fallen log and pulled her close. "Stay low," he whispered. She didn't move, her heart beating like thunder inside her chest. She knew that sound, that weapon. It wasn't human. It was one of her own. Leon returned fire. His face calm but alert. Another shot cracked through the air, this time hitting the tree beside them and showering them with broken bark. "We're surrounded," he muttered. 3, maybe 4 snipers. She knew the truth. 5 Zolari. Scouts, standard attack formation, closing in. This wasn't a coincidence. They weren't here by chance. They were here because of her, because she hadn't given the signal. Her stomach twisted as she realized what this meant. Her team had decided to finish the job themselves. With or without her, Leon turned to her. "You know these woods better than me. Can you flank them?" She blinked, surprised by the question. He still trusted her, even now, even when death was falling from the sky. "I can try," she whispered, standing slowly. He nodded and gave her a small device. "This'll light the air when you're ready. I'll hit them from here." She moved like smoke through the trees, her hands cold but steady as she circled around. She saw them 5 dark figures hidden among the branches, her people, her squad, her past. They hadn't seen her yet. One of them raised his hand to signal a kill shot. She raised her own hand and pressed her weapon against his skull. He froze, shocked, recognizing her too late. "I said no," she whispered, then fired. The other 4 turned, confused. Shouting in their native tongue, one reached for a detonator. She moved fast, shooting 2 more before they could react. The 4th charged at her with a knife. They wrestled in the snow, rolling, blades flashing. In the end, she stood over his broken body, shaking, her chest heaving. Only silence remained. Smoke drifted between the trees, and she could smell the burned wood and blood. She lit the flare and walked back slowly, her steps heavy. Her hands stained with more than just blood. Leon met her halfway, eyes wide. Rifle raised at first, but when he saw her face, saw the sadness, there he lowered his weapon. "They were your people," he said quietly. She nodded, not trusting. Herself to speak, he looked at the bodies, then back at her. Why? It wasn't an attack. Just a soft question, full of confusion and something else, something deeper. She looked at him. Snow falling in her hair, lips trembling, because they would have killed you. She whispered. Then she added something she had never said before, not even in training, and I didn't want you to die. The words stayed between them, hanging. In the frozen air, and for the first time, the line between enemy and ally began to blur. The sun barely touched the sky. And the forest felt colder than before. Smoke from the broken plasma rifles still hung in the air, twisting like ghosts. Valerie's steps were slow, her boots dragging slightly through the snow. Behind her, Leon moved carefully, limping from a wound on his side, his blood leaving a trail that would be easy to follow. They said nothing for a long time. Not because they had no words, but because words didn't feel enough. She had just turned on her own kind, killed the team that trained beside her, laughed with her, bled with her, and all for a man she was supposed to destroy. Leon finally broke the silence, his voice low. Where's the nearest safe place? Velar looked ahead, eyes dull. There's an old mining tunnel 2 kilometers west, abandoned, but deep. He gave a slow nod. That'll have to do. He tried to walk faster, but the wound in his side was bad, and he stumbled. She rushed forward and caught him, her arms slipping under his. You're not going to make it like this, she said. I've had worse, he joked, trying to smile, but his face was pale. No, she said. And without waiting, she lifted him up onto her shoulders. He didn't even argue. Too tired, too weak, she carried him through the trees. His weight heavy, but not impossible. Each step burned her muscles, but she didn't stop. The snow started falling again, harder this time. It covered their tracks. Quickly, but it also slowed them down. A storm was coming, the kind that buried entire valleys. They had to reach the tunnel before night, or they wouldn't survive. Valerie's breaths came fast, her body shaking from effort. She had fought in training pits with double gravity, held her breath underwater for 10 minutes straight. But this was different. This was not just about survival. This was about saving someone who should have been her enemy. Leon muttered something, his voice fading. Should have left me back there. She didn't answer, just kept moving, pushing through branches and snow. She wouldn't leave him. Not now, not after everything. Finally, after what felt like hours, she saw it, a rusted metal hatch half buried under white snow and twisted roots. The old tunnel, forgotten by both sides of the war. She dropped to her knees and set him down gently, then yanked the hatch open. The smell of dust and old metal rushed out. Cold but dry, she dragged him inside, down a short ladder, into the dark. Her boots hit the ground with a hollow thud, and the tunnel swallowed them. She turned on her wrist light, scanning the space. It was empty, silent, and strong enough to keep the storm outside. Leon groaned softly, his head rolling back. She ripped open his uniform and stared at the wound. It was deep, just above the hip, and still bleeding. She grabbed her small field kit and started working. He flinched as she cleaned it, but didn't complain. His voice was weak, but steady. You're not like the others. She paused, hands trembling slightly. No, she whispered. I guess I'm not. Okay. She wrapped the wound tightly, using every bit of knowledge she had. Then she sat beside him, staring at her own hands. They were stained with blood, his and hers, but, for once, she didn't feel like a killer. She felt human, almost. He looked at her with tired eyes. You saved me. I owed you. She said, no. He replied, you didn't. She didn't answer, just leaned back against the wall. The storm outside howled louder, but inside the tunnel, there was stillness. She thought of her commander, of her people, of the future that would now be closed to her. She had betrayed them, and there would be no going back. But when she looked at Leon half-conscious, breathing softly beside her, she felt no regret. Only a strange calm, like the wind had finally stopped screaming inside her mind. The storm raged on above them, but in the cold dark of the tunnel, two enemies shared warmth. And something neither of them could yet name began to grow between them. Wind roared outside like a beast clawing at the earth, but inside the tunnel, everything was still. Valerie sat awake in the dark, her back against the cold metal wall, one hand resting on her weapon, the other near Leon's chest. She wasn't guarding against him, she was guarding for him. His breathing was soft, but shallow. The wound had stopped bleeding, but infection was a risk now. She had already used everything in her medkit, and her body ached from carrying him across the frozen woods, but none of that mattered. What mattered was keeping him alive. She looked down at him, sleeping with a furrowed brow. Even in rest, so human, so fragile, and yet he had survived so much. Her people had called humans soft, emotional, weak, but she had seen more strength in his quiet actions than in 100 battles fought for glory. She didn't sleep that night, not because she couldn't, but because she was afraid to. Afraid of dreams, of orders echoing in her head, afraid of what she might see when she closed her eyes. By morning, the snow had sealed the hatch shut from outside. They were locked in now, but safe. The tunnel stretched deeper underground, and Valerie explored it quietly while Leon rested. Old crates, cracked lights, rusted machinery, memories of a war long past. She found nothing useful except a dusty heater that barely worked. Still, it was enough. When she returned to him, he was awake. His eyes met hers. Weak, but clear. "You stayed," he whispered. Voice dry, she nodded and offered him water. "I told you I would," she said. He sipped slowly, then leaned back. What happens now? It was a simple question, but it hit hard. She didn't have a real answer. Not anymore. Everything she had believed was broken the moment she pulled the trigger on her own squad. "They'll come," she said, voice low. "My people. They'll come for both of us." Leon didn't flinch, didn't look surprised. "I figured," he muttered. "But I won't let them take you," she added. He turned to look at her, and for a long time, neither of them spoke. "I don't understand you," he said finally. "You were supposed to kill me. I know, but you saved me. I know that too." Silence again, filled with the distant rumble of wind and something else. Something more dangerous than the blizzard and certainty. "I've seen betrayal," Leon said softly. "Felt it too, but never like this." She nodded, ashamed but honest. "I lied to you at first. Everything I told you was part of the trap, but not anymore," he asked. "No," she said, "not anymore." He looked at her for a long time, then closed his eyes. "Then let's figure out what comes next, together." Later that day, they heard it, a sound so low it shook the ground. Distant but rising engines. Dropships. Valerie ran to the hatch, pressing her ear against the cold metal. More than one ship, fast, low altitude. Her people were near. She moved back to Leon quickly. "They've found us," she said. "We have to go deeper." He tried to sit up, wincing in pain. "I'm not sure I can walk." Without a word, she helped him again, arm over her shoulders. They moved through the tunnels, deeper and deeper, guided only by the weak light on her wrist. The air grew colder, thinner. But they didn't stop. Every step was a race against death. Behind them, the hatch burst open, metal screeching as it was torn apart. Boots slammed against steel, voices barking in a language only she understood. They were inside, hunting. She picked up the pace, dragging Leon through the old mining corridors. They turned a corner and stopped a dead end. The tunnel was blocked by a collapsed wall, stone and steel mixed together like a grave. Valerie turned quickly, raising her weapon. Footsteps were getting louder, shadows dancing across the walls. Behind them, She knew what was coming. The hunt was over, and the killing would begin. Leon reached for his sidearm, even in pain, but she placed her hand over his. "No," she whispered. Then she stepped forward, alone, into the darkness ahead, toward the voices, toward her people, toward the ones who had sent her here to do a job she could no longer finish. The tunnel echoed with shouts in the Zalari language. Sharp and cold, Valerie moved forward alone. Her hands raised, her weapon clipped to her back. Her steps were calm, but inside, her heart pounded like war drums. She had never faced her own people like this. Not as a soldier, but as a traitor. A squad of 4 met her in the dark, their eyes glowing in the dim light. Armor black with red symbols of rank. One stepped forward, the captain. A scar running across his chin. "Valari," he said flatly, "where is the human?" She didn't answer, just stared at him. He took another step. "You failed your mission. I changed it," she replied quietly. The other shifted, confused by her tone. "You were told to bring him in, alive or dead." The captain growled. "Then you sent others to finish the job." She said, her voice colder now, "But they died." He narrowed his eyes. "You killed them." "I protected someone who didn't deserve to die." There was silence, heavy and tense. "Do you even know what you've done?" the captain asked. "You've broken oath, protocol, everything." She didn't look away. "I've broken chains." Behind her, she heard Leon shifting, weakly dragging himself forward to hear. He had no weapon left, no strength, but he still came. She turned her head slightly. "Stay back," but he ignored her, leaning against the wall. Breathing hard, one of the soldiers saw him and raised a rifle. Valerie moved instantly, standing between the shot and Leon. "Don't," she warned. The captain raised a hand, signaling the soldier to stop. "Why protect him?" he asked. "Because he protected me first," she said. "You're not thinking clearly," he barked. "This is war, not peace." "I've seen war," she said. "This is something else. He is your enemy." "No," she whispered. "He's the only one who treated me like I wasn't." Disposable, the captain stared at her like she was something broken. "You want to die beside a human?" She looked at Leon, still standing somehow. Still watching her with tired eyes. "No," she said. "I want to live with one." The silence that followed was not peace. It was the kind that came before something terrible. The captain gave a final nod. "Then, you're not one of us anymore." He turned his hand, signaling execution. The 2 soldiers stepped forward. Rifles raised, no more warnings, no more chances. Valerie reacted faster than thought. Her blades shot from her wrists, glowing faintly. The first soldier fell before he could fire. The second fired once, missed, and was thrown against the tunnel wall by her spinning kick. The captain drew his blade, and they clashed, metal against metal. He was strong, but she was faster, more desperate. Every strike she made came not from duty, but from choice. She wasn't fighting for honor now, she was fighting for something deeper. Leon tried to move toward her, but his body gave out. He fell hard, groaning. She turned her head for half a second too long. The captain struck, cutting across her shoulder. Blood sprang onto the cold floor. But she didn't stop. With a scream, she twisted his blade from his hand and drove her elbow into his chest. He fell, stunned, wind knocked out of him. She stood over him, weapon at his throat. He stared up at her. Shocked. "Do it," he growled. She lowered the blade. "No," she said. "That's what you would do." She stepped back, picked up Leon, and began to walk. Every part of her body hurt, but she didn't stop. Not now, not after everything. Behind her, the captain didn't rise. He just watched, eyes full of disbelief. As the traitor, the warrior he had trained chose a human over her own blood. The sun had not risen for days, and the sky above the forest was locked in endless gray. Valerie moved slowly through the deep snow, her arms tight around Leon's body. Each step felt heavier than the last. But she didn't stop. She didn't know where she was going, only that she had to keep him alive. Behind them, the tunnel had gone silent. No one followed, no voices, no rifles. Maybe they had been spared, or maybe a report was already being sent back to the Zellar High Command. Either way, there was no going back. Leon coughed against her shoulder, his breath hot and shaky. "You're bleeding again," he whispered. She nodded, but didn't slow. "I'll stop when you're safe," she said. He tried to argue, but the pain forced him quiet. They reached the edge of a frozen stream. Its surface cracked but solid. Valerie scanned the horizon, eyes sharp even through her exhaustion. Far across the trees, she saw smoke. Rising in a gentle column, human camp. Maybe a scout base. It was their only hope. She adjusted Leon on her back and crossed the ice. Each step was a risk. The sound of cracking beneath her boots growing louder, but the weight of what she carried, his body, her guilt. Her decision was heavier than any frozen river. Halfway across, the ice gave a loud groan. She paused, tightening her grip. "We're close," she whispered, more to herself than to him. "Don't die now." Leon didn't answer, but she felt his fingers weakly curl against her shoulder. He was still fighting, just like her. That gave her strength. By the time they reached the other side, her knees were shaking, her vision blurred. But the smoke was closer now, and hope flickered again. A voice shouted from the trees, "Halt!" She dropped to her knees, too tired to care if they shot her. Human soldiers stepped out, rifles raised, ready to fire. But when they saw Leon in her arms, bloodied and nearly unconscious, they froze. "Medical." One of them shouted, running forward. "Get him inside now." Two medics rushed out and took him gently from her arms. As they pulled him onto a stretcher, Valerie collapsed into the snow. Breathing hard, eyes half closed, the world around her faded in and out, voices mixing with the wind. She woke up in a bright room, heat wrapping around her like a blanket. Human tech hummed quietly, soft beeps echoing in the corners. Her shoulder was bandaged, her wounds cleaned. But her heart felt just as raw. A nurse stepped in and looked startled. "You're awake. Where's Leon?" she asked immediately, sitting up too fast. "He's alive," the nurse said with a small smile, resting but stable relief. Crashed into her chest so suddenly it brought tears to her eyes. She nodded and leaned back, trying to breathe again. Later that day, he came to her room, limping but walking. He sat beside her bed without a word and took her hand. Neither of them spoke for a long time. Then he said softly, "They told me what you did." She looked away. "I didn't do it for praise. I know," he said, "but I needed to. Say thank you anyway." She closed her eyes, feeling the warmth of his hand in hers. "I lost everything," she said, voice barely a whisper. "You didn't lose me," he replied. She looked at him then, truly looked. And for the first time since the mission began, she smiled, not the fake one she had practiced, but a real one, full of pain and hope. Weeks passed, and the war moved elsewhere, but their story remained. Written quietly in the snow and scars, she was no longer Zellari elite, and he was no longer just a human soldier. They were something new. Something the war hadn't prepared them for. In the end, it wasn't a gun or a trap that changed everything. It was a choice, hers, to save instead of destroy, to love instead of hate, to begin again. In a world that was still learning what peace could be.